At 2012, on the evening of 23rd February 2007, the 1715 express from London Euston to Glasgow was moving at 95 miles per hour through the Cumbrian countryside near Grayrigg when its left-hand wheels encountered something they were never meant to meet. The switch rails at Lambrigg had moved, silently, completely unrestrained, into a position that made derailment unavoidable. All 9 cars of the Class 390 Pendolino train came off the track. The train slid a further 600 meters down the embankment before stopping. 1 person died, 28 were seriously injured, and the entire sequence of events had been waiting to happen for at least 11 days before anyone noticed. Margaret Masson, 84 years old, was traveling home to Glasgow that evening. She would not make the journey. When the train hit those rails, the physics left no room for intervention. At 92 miles per hour, the wheels of the leading bogies passed the wrong side of the left-hand switch rail and were forced into a narrowing gap between the rails. There was no time for the driver to react, no system that could override what was about to happen. The train did what physics demanded. It derailed. The investigation that began within hours found something troubling at the heart of the wreckage. The Lambrigg 2B switch rails had not simply failed in the moment of the crash. They had been deteriorating for more than a week and a half. 3 stretcher bars that should have held those rails rigid had come apart. One was missing entirely. The bolts that secured the others were gone, some scattered in the ballast, others never found at all. This was not sudden wear. This was a slow, creeping disintegration that had been silently reshaping itself every single day. But there was something more deliberate at work. 5 days before the crash, on 18th of February, a weekly inspection of these same rails had been scheduled. It never happened. The train and its passengers rolled toward Grayrigg on the 5th night after that missed check, completely unaware that they were approaching rails that had transformed from solid infrastructure into something closer to a trap. The deterioration, the investigators would later conclude, had begun at least 11 days before the collision. 8 of those days passed unobserved. 1 scheduled inspection, the only human checkpoint between the emerging failure and the crash, was simply not performed. When the Rail Accident Investigation Branch examined the broader picture, they found the miss was not an accident. It was part of a pattern. Network Rail, which owned and maintained these rails, had not simply forgotten one inspection. The investigation revealed what its report would later call a systematic failure in the track patrolling regime. There was a breakdown in local management. There were shortcomings in safety management arrangements. The company's supervisory structure had fractured. Nobody was reliably monitoring whether the work was being done. The rails at Grayrigg were just the place where that systemic collapse became lethal. The RAB published its interim findings within 3 days. A full investigation followed through the autumn and into October 2008, nearly 2 years after the crash. The branch identified exactly 3 causal factors working together. First, a bolted joint connecting one of the stretcher bars had failed, allowing movement where there should have been none. Second, the switch rails had been set up incorrectly from the beginning, with excessive residual opening that made them more vulnerable to flexure. And third, most preventably, the scheduled inspection that would have caught all of this simply did not take place. 3 separate failures. Each one alone might have been survivable. Together, at 95 miles per hour, they were fatal. What made the investigation even more troubling was that this particular set of rails had been a known problem in the railway network for years. The design of these non-adjustable stretcher bars and the way they joined to the switch rails had vulnerabilities that other parts of the network had already experienced. The system relied too heavily on human inspection and maintenance to catch deterioration. If the inspection happened, the system worked. If it did not, the system had no backup, no redundancy, no fail-safe, just rails that were free to move once their bolts loosened, waiting for a fast train to come along. The RAB made 29 recommendations. 26 went to the Office of Rail Regulation. 3 went to other authorities. They were sweeping. The first recommendation alone demanded that Network Rail fundamentally redesign the stretcher bar assembly so it could withstand operational loads and credible faults without relying so completely on human intervention. The report made clear the rails should not be free to wander simply because an inspection was skipped. The design itself needed to be stronger. The system needed to be more forgiving of human failure, but years passed. Years after Margaret Masson died on that train, 5 of the key safety recommendations had still not been implemented. The redesign of the stretcher bar assembly, the fundamental change intended to stop this from happening again, had not been completed. Network Rail had acknowledged the failures. The company had been repeatedly warned. Yet the machinery of infrastructure change moved slowly, far too slowly, while the same vulnerable rails remained in service elsewhere on the network. The Grayrigg crash proved something that safety investigations often uncover too late. The disaster was not caused by one person's single mistake, and it was not caused by a machine that suddenly and unexpectedly broke. It was caused by a system, a combination of design weakness, missed maintenance, broken oversight, and an inspection that was never performed. At high speed on a clear track, the train and its driver had no agency whatsoever once they met those failed rails. The moment of decision had passed long before, in the weeks of deterioration and the day the inspection was omitted. The crash was already written into the infrastructure. It simply waited for the right train at the right speed to arrive.